I want to talk a little bit today about making friends with trees. Maybe a bit of a foreign concept for some people, but I think it's actually really one of the keys to finding a deeper connection with nature and having really rewarding and meaningful experiences with trees. There's a big difference between simply being able to identify a tree and know what it is from like a species perspective, and actually feeling like you have a deeper, more meaningful relationship with that tree that goes beyond sort of academic understanding and into the realm of an emotional connection where you actually feel something for that tree. You feel a connection for the tree. So what I wanted to do in this video is just talk a little bit about what is involved in the process of actually becoming friends with trees. What does that actually mean to be a friend with a tree, to have a tree as a friend? How do you know when you have it? And how do you get there? If you are someone who wants to cultivate a deeper relationship with trees and you're not really sure how to do that, sounds kind of weird. How do I actually go about doing this? That's what we're going to talk about today. One of the most important things I think to understand about trees, and really all nature connection in general, if you want to get to that deeper level of connection, a big part of this comes down to an understanding that there's a big difference between having an intellectual understanding of trees and having an actual relationship with trees that goes beyond the intellect. So, an intellectual understanding of trees is like knowing the species. This is a red oak here, and I can know the species, and even like if you want to get real specific with knowing the tree and sort of the intellectual level of trees, we can even study the lichens and the mosses that grow on this tree and look for relationships between the things that live on this tree, the birds that live in this tree, the insects that live in this tree, and the fact that it's a red oak. And we can study that as different from a red maple. But it's this whole idea that there's an intellectual level of understanding a tree that you might have from like reading about it in a book, finding it in a field guide, and understanding some facts about it. But there's another way of relating to trees that goes beyond the intellect and gets into more of an emotional connection. I live on the east coast of Canada, and we recently had a hurricane come through. And one of the things that I discovered after the hurricane happened, there's a particular tree in a place called Shubenacadie. It's this one tree that stands alone out in the middle of this farm field, and it kind of just has that really gnarly, old, almost like ancient look to it that really resembles the tree that Rafiki lived in The Lion King. And whenever we would drive past that tree as children, we would recognize that tree, and my brother would always sing the Lion King song when we would pass that tree. And I was amazed to discover through social media after the hurricane came through that we were not the only family who knew that tree in that way. And there were a lot of people, actually a surprising number of people knew that tree, and it fell over in the hurricane. That's why I'm bringing it up in the context of the hurricane. It got blown over, and the number of people who had an emotional response to that tree falling over was astounding. And it speaks to that deeper level of connection that people can have with trees. A lot of those people would have no idea what kind of tree it was. They wouldn't know anything about the botany of it. They wouldn't have any sort of academic understanding of that tree, but they had an emotional connection to it. So how do you actually do this? How do you actually make friends with a tree? The way that I always think about this is to think about connecting with trees in the same way that you connect with people, because we often think of nature as something separate from people, that it needs to be approached in a way that's different from people. But really, the way we connect with trees is very similar to how we connect with people. So often I see people who genuinely want to learn about nature. They genuinely want to connect with what's happening in nature. And they come to a tree and they look at it for like 10, 15 seconds. And they might even recognize that it's an oak tree. And they look at it for that short period of time, and then they just turn and they walk away. This is always very interesting to me because you wouldn't ever do that with a person and think that that person is now your friend just from looking at them for 10 to 15 seconds. The first thing that I tell people is, rather than trying to learn a bunch of different trees, like say you really want to get to know the red oak, rather than going out and finding, 50 different examples of red oak trees, to just pick one tree and to actually approach it in the same way that you would approach having like a coffee date with a friend. You wouldn't just spend 10, 15 seconds with this person and then suddenly think that you're going to be friends forever. You have to actually cultivate that relationship. You have to get out there and you have to spend time with them, just chatting and getting to know them and meeting repeatedly and, just getting to know their stories, getting to know their characteristics, all the little things that make them unique. And that, if you take that approach to learning about trees, your experience will go so much deeper, and you really will start to get to this place where you have a sense of who that tree is as an individual, that it's not just an oak tree in the forest is not the same as every other oak tree in the forest. They all have their own unique characteristics, their own unique sort of flavor. They're growing in a different part of the forest. They have different trees and things around them. They have different animals living in them. They grow in their own unique way that's adaptive to the kind of conditions that they're in. And so we want to honor the fact that each tree is an individual. And so this is the first thing that I tell people is you want to really just think about the places where you go, the forest that you have access to. Ideally, like if you can find one right outside your home that could be like your chosen tree, and really think of it almost as like you're adopting that tree as your tree, and you're going to really put time into connecting with it and getting to know it over a period of time. And each time you come back to that tree in each different season, your relationship with that tree will go a little bit deeper. So a key theme with all of this and with everything that I talk about is that you want to really explore that tree with all your senses. You want to really drop into the moment with it. When you're having your coffee date with that tree, don't be distracted by other sort of things. You want to just give that unique being your undivided attention, and you want to look, you want to listen to the way the wind sounds in the leaves. You want to put your hands on it and really just feel the texture of the bark and all that different stuff. Feel the connection between your hand and that tree. You can even get up really close and actually smell the tree. We often think of, something like a tree. We might not think of it as being something that has a really distinct smell, but it does have a smell. Even if you can't fully identify and label what that smell actually is, what that scent is to you, just the fact that you're taking that time to engage your sense of smell with that tree will help take that relationship deeper. So we want to look at trees through the lens of all our senses, using all your senses. Let's just review what we have so far. You want to just pick one tree and you want to focus on connecting with it as an individual. Not just one species of tree, but one unique individual of that species. And then we're going to approach making friends with that tree in the same way that we would make friends with a person. You know, you're not just going to spend 10 seconds and then carry on your way, because you can't cultivate a relationship in 10 seconds. You're going to actually sit down with that tree. You're going to spend some, you know, 15, 20 minutes, you know, bring some tea and drink your tea with the tree. You're going to really drop in with that living thing, because it's a living thing that you are connecting with. And even though it doesn't talk and it doesn't move and it doesn't have like instantaneous behavior, trees are alive. And if you give them the same attention that you would give to any living thing, that is how the connection starts to form. This is a nice spot right here. I can sort of nestle myself in between the trunks of this tree. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4. It's got 4 main trunks, 2 of which are really the biggest ones. And then in the same way that you wouldn't just have coffee with someone once and then think that they're your friend, friendship is something that is maintained, and you put energy into it over a period of time. You see the same people over and over again, and gradually over a period of weeks, months, years, those relationships start to go deeper, until one day you wake up and you realize, wow, I really care about this person a lot. It's the same thing with trees. And so we don't just want to spend time with a tree once and then you know, think that we know everything there is to know about that tree. A lot of this is just in our mindset of understanding what trees actually are and what they have to offer us. So in the same way that we would connect with people over a period of time, we want to come back to the same trees over and over again, and we want to do this in all different seasons. You know, once you find a tree that you say, I want to come back to this tree, I want to adopt this tree as a friend, you're going to go and spend time with it. You're going to explore it with all your senses. You're also going to come back to it in all different seasons. You know, you want to see, what is it like being with that tree in springtime? What is it like being with that tree in summer? What is it like being with that tree in fall? And what is it like being with that tree in winter? And what happens is, as you do this and you repeat this process over and over and over again, you start to develop an emotional connection to that tree, where the quality of your experience, the quality of time that you spend, and the quality of your sensory engagement with that being, it starts to get into your heart. It starts to actually affect how you feel, where, you know, you might, as you're approaching the tree, you might start to feel a sense of happiness, that you're just happy to see that tree. If anything happens to it, you know, if a fire comes through, if a hurricane happens and, you know, the tree gets damaged in some way, or I had a tree that I was taking care of, actually. It was a hemlock tree when I was a teenager, and it was quite young at the time, and I've gotten to watch it grow and get bigger over the years. But at that time, there was a porcupine came through when it was quite young, and actually scraped away, ate a bunch of the bark at the base of the tree, and I was really worried that it wasn't going to survive. Thankfully it did, and I was able to watch the process of that wound healing. And what happens is, as you start to visit the tree over and over again, you start to experience the life of that tree. You start to realize that there's a story behind things that happen to that tree. There might be certain seasons where particular animals interact with your tree in ways that they don't interact in other seasons. And you only get to experience that through being there over and over again. And one day you go out there and just something really cool happens. You know, maybe an owl lands in your tree, or you find that there's like a family of raccoons living there, or a porcupine has bit off a bunch of the bark at the base. Something happens and you get to be part of that story. That will give a meaning to your relationship with that tree that wasn't there before, that wouldn't have otherwise been there, and that you don't have with any other tree. Just in the same way that you have experiences with people, this is what happens with trees as well. But you have to take the time to get outside and pick a tree that is accessible to you, that you can come back to over and over again. And you have to ground your senses in the moment so you can look and listen and touch and feel and just really get that sense of what it's like to be friends with that tree. This is what I mean when I say that there's a level of connection with trees that goes beyond the intellectual understanding. I mean, it's great to read books, it's great to, study things, and if you are someone who wants to study trees at an academic level, that's great. But simply studying trees in that academic, intellectual way will not produce this kind of deep connection with the tree that happens through sitting with it in all different seasons for years and years and years, and really developing that relationship and experiencing the story of that tree. And likewise, you don't have to be an academic in order to develop this kind of connection with a tree. Literally anyone can go outside. A lot of kids who live on farms and have like a family apple tree, they will develop that kind of connection with that apple tree. And it's not an uncommon experience for people to develop these sorts of connections with trees. Maybe you had an experience like that when you were younger, and you've either moved away from that tree or it's no longer there for whatever reason. You can go out and recreate these connections with trees. And this is, in my personal experience, this is a very rewarding way of engaging with nature. And I can, anytime I want, anytime I need a little pick-me-up, I can always just come out, spend some time with my tree, and walk away feeling happier, healthier, more alive, more connected within myself. The other thing that we want to do is we want to look at our tree from all different perspectives. So don't just get focus locked on, looking at the bark or looking at the leaves. We want to look at, studying the base of the tree. How does the tree actually connect into the ground? Do its roots sort of go in? This one, they sort of go in like directly, but sometimes you come to a tree and the roots like come way out the side. We can look at, how do the trunks work? We can study the bark, look at the tree all the way up to the top in the canopy. I mean, if it's safe and you feel comfortable doing it, you can even climb the tree and see what it's like from a higher perspective. We want to spend some time getting in nice and close and looking at things from a very near perspective. And we also want to go further back and actually look at what the tree looks like from further away. One of the actual interesting things that I'm noticing about this tree is that there are not really all that many acorns under it. And in this season, this is the acorn season right now. And I've been noticing that a lot of the oak trees in this area are producing huge crops of acorns. But this one, for whatever reason, is not producing a large drop of acorns. And it makes me kind of curious about what is driving that, and makes me curious to come back in other years and check in and see whether that's consistent in future years, or whether sometimes I might come back and I might find that it produces a much bigger crop of acorns. Another thing I want to note with all this, it's when we have these personal, one-on-one, intimate connections with trees that they feel like our friends. We get to know them over a period of time, and we have that deeper level of connection. That friendship that we cultivate is what makes us care when a particular forest is under threat, or when people aren't treating the landscape with respect and allowing our environment to thrive in the way that it's designed to. The more people who have these kinds of connections directly with the plants and the trees and the animals that live in these places, the more likely we are to make good decisions about caretaking them and helping nature to thrive, while also still being able to get our needs met as people, getting into that place of harmony and balance with the forest. So I hope you found this topic interesting and practical and something that you can take out and just to realize that there's a lot that I can say on this topic. I might make more videos if people have more questions or if they find this to be a really interesting topic. But even as there's a lot I can say, the other thing that I really want to get across is that this is super easy. Just don't overthink this. Just, have fun with it. Get out there, meet a tree, spend time with that tree, and make friends with that tree. And that's really all you have to do. And I would love to hear about what kind of trees you've made friends with and what kind of stories you have about them. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next video.